He's not this like unstoppable entity out there. It's not like, oh no, Thanos is coming with his clipboard.
Welcome into the Get Invested podcast, a podcast about all things real estate and real estate investing, brought to you by Capital Velocity Investments and a part of the Matthias Talks Investing Substack.
Hello. Welcome into another episode of the Get Invested podcast with your hosts, Jordan and Matthias. As always, we're excited to be here to talk all things investing, real estate, and real estate investing. Today, we're going to get into something that, well, really stems from some things that have been going on in my life, in my neighborhood. We're going to talk about HOAs and specifically their interactions with connections to property as an investment, whether that be maintaining values, hurting the ability to sell, helping the ability to sell, limiting opportunities to rent, helping opportunities to rent. However, you may want to think about it as an investment. There's multiple different ways, of course. And so we're going to come at this a little bit as it's kind of be of two different things. One, the house that you have, and then the other part, a house that you may have as an investment for rent and or I guess we don't normally talk about flipping or buying to fix up and sell, but I guess that could be part of it.
Yeah, that's a way to invest real estate. Yeah.
So essentially it's all an investment, of course, but the approach is going to be a little bit different depending on if it's one you're living in versus one that you are buying as an investment. So that is what we're going to talk about today. But before I throw it over to you, I was just going to, full disclosure, I am actually the treasurer of my HOA board, and we've been going through some things in the community. So just transparency, I am coming from that position. If you feel that my views are too sympathetic,
it's good to have the other perspective. You know, we were talking about this the other day. We've had our share of run-ins with HOAs and with investment properties. We have one in our current, on our house we live in, there's an HOA there, but there's also, we had a unit in a townhome community that had obviously the HOA there, and plenty of fun was had there. And then we also had a short-term rental in a condo complex, and obviously there's an HOA there as well. So we've had our run-ins with well-run HOAs that are kind of non-intrusive and just exist in the background and don't really impact things. And then we've also had one where a completely ineffective HOA and things needed to be done, and this, we'll talk more about it, I guess, as we get into it, but things needed to be done and they couldn't get things done for a plethora of reasons. But I guess my whole philosophy in investing, I'm a minimize risk and eliminate risk kind of guy as much as I can in order for me to, make the safest, quote unquote, safest investment possible. And HOAs are a potential risk in that there's things that I can't control. One of the best ways I mitigate risk is having the control, complete control over the investment or the property or whatever. And if there's an HOA involved, I may not have that complete control. So it's potentially an added risk. So I avoid it these days, but that doesn't mean there aren't plenty of good investments that you could make it, in a townhome community, short-term rentals in a condo or even in a neighborhood that just has an HOA.
Yeah. Well, I think first, I guess we should say that the properties that we buy, if there is one, it is dissolved, or there is not one. In that, well, there is really, but it's just us. It's the property management team.
Yeah, exactly. It would function a little bit like an HOA, true. Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly. So in those instances, when we're buying an entire complex, an HOA doesn't entirely make sense, including the fact that nobody in these instances is an actual homeowner per the name.
Yeah.
So those type of properties, you kind of need to set aside. And not that you were referring to those. I just wanted to clear that up specifically because it goes to kind of my bigger point right now, which is like the 1B of what I just said, is that one of the issues with talking about HOAs and discussing their potential efficacy or lack thereof is that there is a very serious lack of delineation in what type of HOA when people both discuss them. And I have found through my in-depth hour of research.
Nice.
That
Some fierce
there's
Googling.
yeah, wow, hey, whoa. I went further than that. I'm using, AI geared towards research.
Mm-hmm.
There is a serious lack, even in the like attempt at research and literature, like at a rigorous level, of differentiating what kind of HOA it is, right? Whether it's, these are things coming from the Cato Institute and places like that, where they're trying to actually get it, hey, does it help home values? Does it help safety issues? Does it help quality of living? Like all these kind of things. One of the issues is that there's not enough done in general, but there's not enough done to separate whether it's a dense, townhome community that has, here's how they put it,
things,
conflates high amenity master plan communities with minimal deed restricted subdivisions, right? So it's comparing a loose association of houses
in a neighborhood.
Yeah. With, oh no, everyone is like works together and things are done together because of the situation, how it was planned, how closely they live, how they're connected, etc. So that was a long explanation, but that is one thing that we do need to clear up. So we should probably be specific when we're referring to what the situation was. And then of course, how it can be effective or not. Just wanted to.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good point. So currently we live in a neighborhood with an HOA. So it's a neighborhood HOA. There's very little restrictions. We don't have like a neighborhood pool or anything. So there's literally the HOA pays for, the HOA pays for like sheriffs to just kind of chill in our neighborhood, a certain number of hours a week and not much else. Cause city does the roads and then, the bylaws and stuff of who can build some crazy thing on the front lawn and things like that, and keeping your lawn trim to XYZ standards or whatever. That's really all we ever deal with in our HOA. But we have had a townhome community with a pool and with common roofs, right? So and one of the problems that we had is that we bought a unit as an investment to rent it out, and we knew when we bought it needed a roof, which had it been a standalone, we would have just replaced the roof. But seeing as it's part of the community, there's the HOA's responsibility is supposed to be the roof. Now,
sure,
the fun part is that the HOA had been charging such low fees for so many years, they had no money for the there was a ton of deferred maintenance around the property. The pool needed work, the pool house needed work, all the roofs needed to be replaced. And what had happened is some of the residents had just started replacing their own roofs, like their own little area over theirs, which, sometimes if it's actively leaking on your stuff in your apartment, you can't wait for the HOA to get its, things together. And so basically there was people who had done that. And then sure enough, when the HOA says, all right, we're serious, we're going to do the roofs, those people voted against it because they were like, I'm not going to pay another assessment to get the roof replaced. I've already done mine. And everyone else is like, I get it, but that's not how this works. We can't just
made a decision.
Patchwork. Yeah, I get it. I'm sorry that happened to you. You did the best you could, and I'm sorry that but we need new roofs. Everybody's roofs are leaking now, so like we've got to do this. And so that's what you run into with, because you don't have the control of if I owned the majority of the units and I could win all the votes, then it would be a different story. I could have control in that type of scenario where I'd say, all right, guys, we're doing roofs, and you can't vote me down. I don't care what you did to your own unit. Right. That kind of thing. So that's one of the issues that we've run into in the past.
Interesting. I was just thinking that situation that likely there would be more people who had yet to fix their roof than people who had taken the initiative to fix their roof, and therefore they would be outvoted.
But there's some serious personalities in there, and they would convince other people not to vote for it. And there was people who just never paid attention to anything and they didn't vote. So, we were stuck at that threshold for a long time. And there was colorful HOA meetings where, there's certain people who always show up and always have super strong opinions about everything. And if those people are against whatever the HOA needs to do, it's a chore. It's a chore to kind of overrule them.
Yeah. So I guess another full disclosure type thing, or just context more. I feel like I'm admitting things. This is not like
this is not a deposition.
Yeah, good. Like I'm like one of those pharmaceutical commercials at the end. It's like,
just
45
for 20 minutes
of speed reading of side effects. No. So I don't think I've actually ever mentioned this on the mic, but it's just Rachel and me, and she wanted to live close to her job and close to the city, and we didn't want to spend a ton. So we live in a townhome. So that's a bit of context from coming from me as far as like what kind of HOA I'm a part of. So that is interesting if you're a homeowner, but you're not in the neighborhood. So we have like 274 units. It's not a huge townhome community, but it's not a small one either. And you're getting votes to change things like that, as far as bylaws and stuff like that, has been difficult in the past. We actually are fortunate that the HOA has been good and has been on the ball. And for instance, Matthias, you know, we talked about this obviously off the mic, but you know, we're finishing the roofs on the last bit of the community. You know, each year we've been doing some. My roof was done in 22, which is one of the reasons we really liked the house, because we were like, oh, it just got replaced. Heck yeah.
That'll be good for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, one of the reasons that I was happy to be a part of the board is because a lot of well-meaning people serve on the board, but they may not have financial acumen. And so, you know, came on, realized that the contract they were getting wasn't the best, bids, saved a bunch of money. We're happy with it. We're moving forward. So that part's functioning great. And this exchange of there wasn't enough assessment to fix the roofs in a timely manner, then they had to, and it was a cluster versus, oh, they've been doing
planned ahead. And
because the treasurer two before me, not the one before me, but right before that, he was on the ball. And you know, so planned ahead and all that works great. No one's complaining about the roof situation, right? Like no one's upset that the roofs are being placed, all that stuff. That right there is what it boils down to. And I was joking with you yesterday about it, that the research basically says, oh, well, if they're run well, it's great.
Yeah, exactly.
So like every governance ever. Yeah, of course. But that is interesting, because another tension that you're pointing to there, and I don't want to get too off track, so, you know, steer us back here, but is that the assessment has to be enough so that you can actually do things, especially when it's a dense situation like a townhome. You're sharing walls, you're sharing roofs, you're sharing yards. People are going to be upset when it's raised, but you're like, we have to have money.
And that's exactly what that was in this particular situation. And this is, you know, had we known all of this prior to buying it, we may not have bought it. It's not we ended up doing well on the property anyway, so you know it didn't kill us or anything. What we discovered is that the residents had loved having low monthly HOA fees, so they were well below the market standard for 15 years, and they hadn't. And every time that the HOA company, because there was like a third party management company that was helping run the HOA, would go, hey guys, you're not going to have any money to do all the roofs, the pool, all the things that were going to need to be done, in the next 5-10 years. And all the residents, enough of the residents just kept saying, nope, we're not voting for raising fees. And so it was kind of like the HOA managers were just like, well, we'll do what we can, but we don't have enough money to do anything. And that's what got us. And it happened long enough that they kind of put everybody in a position where some of the members ended up having to do their own roofs in the meantime, and caused, more friction. And it's basically, not only do the HOA managers and the board members and all those people have to have the foresight, but they've got to be able to communicate the reason, kind of long-term thinking to the residents as well, and get them on board. Because the residents are just going, all I care about right now is that my monthly fee is low. You got to talk them into saying it's in your own interest that it goes up so that we can replace your roof, which is going to cost you individually, $15,000 to do on your own. And then we're going to have to assess and do the whole roof at some point, and there's going to be another $10,000 assessment or whatever, what have you. And it's like, so it is in your interest to help us plan ahead for these things. And then, then you start talking personalities and, Karens and well, all the fun personality types that end up in HOAs. It's just something that you got to work through, and it can be, like I said, it can be done and it can be run perfectly fine, like your townhome community is. But if not, then it could be a real hassle and a threat to your investment.
Yes, I think that in that situation, it seems like a lot was put on whoever the board was to essentially run a PR campaign to explain to everyone the very clear financial incentives, among others, to increase the assessments, which is a lot to put on a volunteer position, but it is something that, comes with the territory. For us, it's a board decision. You don't have to have the entire community vote. Now, of course, if we decided we're going to raise it $500 a month or something, if there would
People
be,
would have some thoughts.
there are measures in place that they could fight that. But I do remember, and that's one of the key things, right? As far as if they're run well, they're great. One of them is, are you actively providing clear, impacting services, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge part, which that's one of the big differences between, say, your HOA situation and mine, your personal one, is that they're minimal intervention, right? It's, hey, if someone lets their yard go crazy, they're going to get a notice like, what are you doing? Or,
pretty much.
If they decided they're not going to alert the neighborhood and get some permits or whatever, or somehow manage to start building something without approval, it's going to be, hey, what are you doing? Right. Stuff like that, rather than active things.
Exactly.
Right? So that was the thing when we bought at first, when we were looking at this place, we were a bit taken aback by the price of the fees. But then they explained to us that, that covers trash, water, sewer, and landscaping. So you add all that together, and the price was all of a sudden like, and on top of that, right, new roofs, fixing plumbing issues in the community, common areas, pool, we have nice little green areas, etc. It really matters.
Exactly.
And that it becomes a deal at that point because you're doing it together, and it's proactive stuff, right?
Yeah. And something you brought up there is, that I think is important, is obviously it's whatever's in the bylaws. What is required in order to do X service, Y service? You know what I mean? Like, what's required to allow the board to raise, if it's the board or if it's the management company that's, raising the HOA fees or whatever, whenever the master plan happened, however long ago the construction, the community was built, whenever they created those bylaws, that's, that it matters what's required to do what. And in that particular case, clearly they did not set themselves up for success. They made it too difficult to build a budget to replace the common things that we're going to eventually need, serious maintenance or replacements and so on. So, I mean, if I would say that my advice to somebody considering buying an investment in a townhome or a community that has the common areas and, potentially common services, get in there and dig around a little bit in the actual, you can get before you even buy, you can, you can go, they're a matter of public record, I believe. So you can go look at the bylaws for the community and go, hey, what does it take? And I would always say, and this, something we've learned, but look at the budget and the financial health of the HOA. When you come in, so, and you want to know, you're going to want to know when the roofs were done, and hey, are they budgeting, or is there always an assessment whenever they do something? Which I'm not saying one way is wrong or one way is right, but you need to be prepared for that assessment if it's coming, or you need to be prepared for them to raise HOA fees. If you're looking at the budget and say, hey, the roofs are, we're going to pick on roofs, it's a pretty understandable thing, but hey, if the roofs are going to be $100,000 to replace, and I'm just making numbers up, and they've got 15,000 saved, and they're going to be, you know what I mean? And they're going to need, they're going to need to replace in the next 5 years.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It's like, all right, well, something's got to change. Either the roofs are going to start leaking and start causing damage, and we're going to have to patch them, which is going to cost thousands of dollars. And then eventually they'll need to, you know what I mean? So these are things that you should be looking at if you're heading down that path towards buying in an HOA.
Absolutely. And I would say that on that note of kind of advice, if you're looking at a property, the realtor that you're working with should definitely be able to send you that stuff. I do believe it's public record, but sometimes those kind of things can be hard to track down.
Yeah, you have to walk into the office that maintains it or something and actually pull up a copy or something.
You should be able to get a copy of bylaws. The budget one, that might be a little bit more, but that should be accessible as well. And then, because I would say that, especially if you're buying as an investor, not a home, not as I'm going to live there, thinking that a bad HOA or a poorly one or an inefficient one or one that has let things go could turn it around without incredible effort on your part or others is maybe if you're just buying it as an investment, like in that regard, then there's definitely got to be a better place to go, right? You don't want to try to turn around an HOA. That's
a monumental task, like what I'm saying. And
yeah.
when we sold that unit, they were still doing more assessments because they still needed more work to be done, and people were still fighting, and we had our fill. And again, it's like it was being corrected, but that was such a painful. I mean, it took years and many HOA meetings and fighting with the same lady who would stand up on her balcony and yell at everyone in the parking lot. Like, it's just, it is a monumental task to turn that around and fix it, unless you somehow control it. Again, it comes back to the controlled. You can not completely eliminate, but you can really manage that risk if you can swing the vote, as it were, and exert a little bit of control where you can remove some of the personality risk.
Yeah, and I would say that approach, has its nuances depending on what kind of property you're buying. If you're buying a home, a quote unquote single family home in a kind of loosely held HOA, where there's not really any common areas, but there are a few things that it's like, well, that should be something under the purview of the HOA. Maybe the bar is a little bit lower. One of the instances I'm thinking about, which is there's like the clearest example of why some sort of HOA is maybe a good thing. We were looking at a house in a neighborhood that didn't have one, and not the across the street neighbors from this house, somebody down the block had some like landscaping business, and they had two pretty junky trucks, one truck worse than the other, but neither of them exactly sleek automobiles, and trailers that matched. And so even if they were brand new and nice, it would be a problem. But this house was right at the end of the dead end. And so this guy
parked his trucks along the street in front of everybody else's house.
Right again, because it's like where there's like the guardrail, like a little short guardrail. It's like, this is it. So he just backed him in as like this was his like personal parking place right in front of these two houses. Now, he didn't block the way, of course, but every time you looked out, that's what you saw. And it was like, holy moly. Well, can they not do anything about that? And it's like, there's no HOA to help them with this. I'm like, so essentially, if it's a public street, which it probably is, you just have to call the cops repeatedly to come out there and ticket / talk to this person. It would be like your only recourse if it is indeed
that.
Yeah. So in a situation like that, if you're buying a house for investment, you're like, oh, there's like small hurdles, like people doing things, those sort of things. If there's an HOA, probably can help you, even if it's not doing a lot, I guess is my point. But if there's not one, then
true.
You got control the other way. You have lack of control the other way.
Something else that I've actually seen is that some HOAs limit the number of short-term rentals you can have in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost impossible for an HOA to put restriction on long-term rental, where somebody's living in the house. But if let's say you're trying to Airbnb in a
lots
neighborhood,
of neighborhoods have things against that for sure.
Yeah. They might outright ban it, or they might have a limitation on how many houses in the neighborhood at any given time can be a short-term rental, and that's something that can be changed while you're after you buy too. So that's something to be aware of. I've seen that happen too, is where I think at one point our neighborhood was trying to impose something. I don't remember what happened with it, but basically, I mean, you could basically eliminate the ability of your whole business plan too. So it's something to be aware of when you're buying. And honestly, it's kind of on you to pay a bit of attention, because you don't want to be in a golf course community that, or whatever. You should, if I were you, I would avoid buying a house to use as an Airbnb inside a quiet neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're kind of going opposite what the intention of the neighborhood was.
Exactly. Exactly.
If you're down along the beach and, the high-rise beach houses, those are designed to be, those whole neighborhoods everything's Airbnb, short-term rental type property. And so buy that house and do that house there. I get it. That's $1 million beach house, but I would say think about what the community that you're buying into was designed to do. And if your business plan is kind of counter that, beware, because they might catch on to you and they can change the laws if you're, you or your tenants are bothering kind of the intent of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think short-term rental is like kind of the clear, I don't say extreme as in like crazy, but just to the max on a range of that sort of scenario where you're like, well, you bought in a quiet neighborhood where there's like kids coming home from school and you got people crashing because they wanted to go. They're there for short term.
It's a crash pad for a party, spring break weekend. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like, come on.
I've actually stayed. This is back in the day when Airbnb was kind of just getting started. A couple years in, we didn't know it at the time, but we stayed at a house that turned out the neighborhood didn't allow Airbnb or short-term rentals. And they're like, so here you got to park here and do this. And we're like, okay. It was a really nice house, really nice neighborhood outside of Charleston, but we were like, now we're like covert.
Yeah, I know, right? I feel like I'm sneaking around. Yeah.
I mean, they lived there.
That too.
They lived there and had people in. Like, they mixed us an amazing brunch. They were cool as all get out, but they were just doing it because they wanted to do it, and they wanted people kind of like to kind of mix it up. But yeah, that was funny because we were like, looking over our shoulder, like, is someone watching? But the rental situation, if you're renting and there's an active HOA, it's really not. I got to be honest. We have some issues, people who are renting, but it's really more just a few people who are renting. And sometimes it could be because they're just like, I'm not in this community. I'm renting for a little while. I'll be here a year or two. I'm not buying in, if you will. But other times it's literally just like the owners need to just communicate to the renters, like, here are the rules. And it seems like there's a lack of that communication sometimes. So that's another thing I would say from my side, where we're having to speak to some renters about, these are things you clearly cannot do. Were you shown the bylaws as part of your lease? Like, this needs to happen.
I get it. And it's almost like there's a misalignment of incentives because, like you said, the renter's like, I don't have I'm not financially tied to how any of this works. So I don't particularly care about the bylaws. Why would I care? And it always ends up being, the parking or, leaving trash here or dumping there or whatever, things like that obviously they do need to know, but it's almost like they're not bothered until somebody walks up to them with a list saying, no, this is how you got to do it. And the homeowner likewise is not there. They're concerned with making sure that the condition of the property is good and the renters are not breaking all their things in there.
Yeah.
They're not having the interactions with the neighbors that the renters are. So both parties don't care, but for different reasons.
Yeah. And
scenario.
It has been interesting sometimes where I feel that we have tried to couch everything in a way that would make it so that the owners would care. Like, this tenant is driving across the lawn to get out of the driveway. This lawn that you own, part of, that is shared with the community, that is maintained by the community, that has irrigation and sprinkler systems in it.
Yeah.
That we will have to repair if they're broken, that you will get fined for / assessments will have to go up. Yeah. In that instance, it seems like you should be communicating clearly, hey, tenant, please don't, drive across the yard.
I feel silly telling you this, but
yeah, exactly.
The driveway is for driving.
Yeah. Hey, you see that no parking sign? Don't park in front of it. That's just kind of basic stuff, man. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of a communication pipeline, if you will, especially when, like you said, there's probably a third-party management company that's intermediary, right?
Right.
That from between the board or the HOA and any party who's being communicated to.
And providing that expertise that, your average homeowner serving on the board is not going to, like you said, just because you live in the neighborhood doesn't necessarily qualify you to understand the legalese of HOA bylaws. You know what I mean? So you hire the managers this is what they do, manage communities and that kind of thing. So,
right. So I think we mentioned this, but just to put a little emphasis on it, one of the assessments that you would want to make if you're looking at it as an investment, not so much moving into, but as an investment, is how much is there of common areas and what do they look like? That's because one, if there are common areas, then the HOA is going to have more to do, right? And it's going to have a bigger presence, and it means there's more to go wrong, or it's more of a clear indication of where that HOA is at.
In the health. Yeah. It's like, what does it look like what does the shed in the back of the, behind the pool look like? If it looks like, it belongs in a trailer park or something, then you go, okay, well, it would appear that there's hopefully they have a budget for a brand new shed or or it's been neglected, both of which could be an indicator, like you said, of the health or lack thereof of the common area and the HOA operations.
Right. In that instance, in this example, it actually makes it very kind of one-to-one with looking at an apartment that a management company such as ourselves or the ones that work with us would own, right? You can kind of assess the quality of an HOA just like you can assess the quality of a management company at an apartment complex or by looking at the pool, right?
Yeah.
That is like a key indication. Back in the day when I was looking right out of college, find the economical apartment where the pool wasn't scummy and
Green.
clearly not taken care of or shut down completely or whatever. That's the clearest indication of like pride of place kind of thing,
Mm-hmm. And
so
just
either way,
general health, like hey man, if they can't afford to fix the pool or they're refusing to, both of those are a pretty tough sign for a potential tenant to, the landlord probably isn't spending the most attention and money on providing homes for people if the pool looks like that.
Yeah, and then on the other side, if it looks like that, it looks bad, maybe not that bad, but it doesn't look good, and you know that there's HOA fees, either they're not enough or it's ineffectual at the governance level. If someone's not managing it, other people don't care enough to go be on the board to fix it. That's another thing.
Right.
Is a lot of people just don't want to be dealt with. They want to come tell you what's wrong. That's that story you said about, going to your superior officer, like, there's our problem, instead of coming like, hey, here's how I think we could solve this problem.
Right.
Or I'm willing to get in there and try to solve this problem. There's a lot of, the parking's terrible here. Okay, well, here's what you can do to help us fix that. I got this to do. I got that to do.
I was hoping you were going to do everything.
Yeah, exactly. So
very much the case.
I would say that I don't know how you feel about this, but to kind of bring it around and pinpoint it to the idea of the investment, as far as leasing to a tenant, I don't think overly strict HOA rules really comes into play, because it comes into play before then, right? It comes into play about whether or not you would want to buy, and if because one of the downsides can be high assessments deter people from purchasing for whatever reason. If you purchase to lease, then you're going to have to put that in and make the rent's going to be that much higher, right? So if you're trying to sell or you're trying to rent, that it can hurt in that regard. So it's really either are they too high or are they too high for what's being done? But if there's one and it seems maintained for the most part pretty solid, fees are reasonable, most likely it's going to benefit you as an investor for that house, whether you're living in it or not, because it'll maintain the neighborhood and allow appreciation. For the most part, is kind of the trend I'm getting from the research. But
yeah, I would agree with that.
Annoying.
Yeah.
Right. So, I was originally going to entitle this "The Good, the Bad, and the Possibly Annoying," but
I like that.
Yeah. Well, because sometimes it is like, oh, that is annoying, but also it needs to be done, right? Like I think the biggest joke is like, oh, HOA, they're going to send you an ugly note or send you a warning because you don't bring your trash cans back in time, right? Like that's like the
you didn't make it by 5 p.m. on the
right, like
or whatever.
The petty tyranny of the functionary, right? Or the tyranny of the petty functionary. But that one is the one I always used to joke about, and like that's not what we're doing. We're doing some of the other things. But there have been times where actually, people just left it out for like days and it like rolled into the street where you're like, no, send that person a warning. It's in the street. I can't go put their trash can back for them. I don't even know where it's in their garage. Like what am I doing?
Yeah.
So in that regard, that's like it could be annoying, but also, okay, if it's approached correctly, it's not somebody who
walking around with a clipboard all day, every day. Yeah,
exactly. Someone who doesn't have anything better to do. And having not been on the board, I assure you I have plenty of better things to do, but sometimes they have to be done. Like this weekend, we're going to do an Easter egg hunt. That's fun. Didn't have to do that either.
Yeah. And on that same note, though, is I liked when I'm describing to people our HOA and what I like about it, it's typically that we have like relatively strict lawn, trash can, all those different in the bylaws where it gives you the option to enforce it if it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want them in there, but then it's up to the board, the discretion of the board. And typically our board is is pretty good at the things that I care about anyway. I've never received a letter, and of course our trash can's been out late. It happens, whatever. If we were gone on a vacation, maybe our lawn was long or something too. But like I like the ability of like, hey, if it's in the bylaws, you can enforce it when you need to. So if somebody's parking a junk truck on blocks in their front yard, well, there's something in the bylaws, we can go address it if it happens. No reason to ever talk to somebody who's, somebody jacks up a truck in their driveway to change the oil or something. There's no reason that we need to go. I'm just making this up, but I'm just saying it may be technically against the rules, but it's not a problem. It's not a thing until it becomes a thing. And then as long as it's in the bylaws, you can enforce it when it becomes a problem.
You say you're making it up, but we did just have someone who decided to put his car up on Jackson blocks on the street. And then so we just have this like one kind of problem curve, really is what it is. And just a few, that's the other thing is, it's a few people, a lot of it, right? 80% of it's 20% of the people. No, it's like 80% of it's like 3% of the people.
Yep.
But, and then he left it. He didn't finish. But he got a ticket like from the cops because
that ain't even us.
That thing, who knows? That thing comes off those blocks. It could be rolling down the street. Like who knows what could happen? Anyways, so you say you making it up, but it was funny because when we were deciding what to do about this, they're like, you can't fix stuff in the neighborhood. Blah blah blah. There's zoning rules, and there are blah blah blah. And I was like, y'all, this is a problem. But I would like you to know that I changed my spark plugs in my driveway like 2 months ago. They're like, you must have been more discreet about it. I was like, well, yeah, I just did it in like 3 hours.
Popped the hood and did some
and
stuff, and then I closed it and moved on with my life. Yeah, exactly. And like I said, if it would be intrusive if somebody was walking around while you were changing the couple hours you were changing a battery or something in your car, and somebody was trying to tell you you're not allowed to do that. It was like, well, but if it sits there for 3 days and there's car parts laying all over the street or the lawn or the driveway, then obviously that's the time to enforce it if it's in the bylaws. That is the standard joke. I say I want it all in the HOA, and then I want to enforce it when we absolutely need to. And other than that, just kind of point to the sign type thing.
Yeah, and I mean that's
move on.
Honestly, there's so much of town ordinances and things that local police do that is exactly the same thing, right? I forget who said it, but there's a famous line basically. Every man breaks the law eventually if you follow him long enough, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it depends. I mean, it might probably not something major, but if you really wanted to like, hold them over, you say, for instance, or exactly. So no, we just need it there, like you said, to be actionable and applied. And at that point, that's about the maintenance, which then of course helps in order while letting people live their lives. That helps keep values in places from, especially if they get older, that's the thing. A lot of the research says that as the neighborhoods get older, I guess the traction of the HOA will lose some ground, but I think that's more, again, the loosely held rather than the dense. Yeah.
And the further you get removed from whatever the original intent of the neighborhood when they did all the bylaws and the master plan for the neighborhood and all that, the further away you get from that, obviously it's gonna. I mean, ours was a retirement. The one we live in now was a retirement neighborhood. I mean, everybody built unique houses there. That's kind of their forever home. We're done. This is where we're gonna live. And now that was 30 years ago. So now obviously there's young families and kids playing in yards. That was not necessarily the intent way back when, so
right.
We've adjusted accordingly. The HOA has.
Well, that's the other thing. Again, if you're investing where you are not going to live is one thing, but if you move in and you don't like the HOA, it's a democratic organization. You can
you can rally some votes,
sign up to change it. Yeah, exactly.
A hostile takeover,
unstoppable entity out there that it's not like, oh no, Thanos is coming with his clipboard. So that's. I think that's why it depends on what scenario you're looking at across the board, what type of property and what type of investment you're looking to make, for sure. So I guess just to wrap it up here, for the most part, I would say HOAs positively impact investments, or maybe a little more nuanced. You can, in a straightforward manner, find out beforehand whether the HOA is going to positively impact the
it's going to be a problem or not. Yeah, I agree with that. And again, my advice as a I don't know, professional investor is that if you're going to cede control, know who and what you're ceding control to. In the instance, let's say you're buying that townhome community with the roofs and stuff. It's not necessarily going to kill your investment to cede that control, but just do that added research to verify that you're ceding control to a capable HOA that has good long-term home values in mind and is actively operating and successfully operating towards those goals.
Yeah.
That's what I would verify.
Nothing else. Walk around the neighborhood, knock on some doors, talk to people walking their dogs. I assure you, they'll have thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, pretend like you're putting a sticker on somebody's car. And they'll just come running out.
I just can't imagine a townhome community where everyone's doing their own roof. God, like just the checkerboard.
It had been decades since correct decisions had been applied.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up there. It's an interesting topic, not something that I would say that we as a company deal with very often, but it is definitely something that is a part of investment strategies. So we hope you guys enjoyed that and
interested to hear thoughts and maybe some horror stories would be fun.
Want to hear horror stories about the HOA, but also it would be nice to hear the other side as well. I'm okay with either side personally, So we appreciate you guys hanging out and listening to us. As always, you can reach out on Substack, Spotify, YouTube, the website, email Jordan and or Matthias at capitalvelocityinvestments.com. And we hope that you will come back next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast.
See ya.